Hey everyone, this is an insert to our regular Wednesday episode. We finished recording just before the news dropped that the Penguins will be placing goaltender Tristan Jarry on waivers at 2:00 on Wednesday. So, Hunter, our episode today is going to be a tiny bit outdated because we are talking about the goaltending for the majority of the episode, but doesn't really change the discussion of where this team is, what this team needs to improve upon, and everything that's gone wrong over the past week or so. But I mean, at this point, pretty much inevitable. You look at the last two games the Penguins played and played very well, and were just completely undone by goaltending.
Right. And as you'll hear during our episode, we both make arguments for why they need to jettison Tristan Jarry, either waive him, trade him, bury him in the minors, whatever. They are placing him on waivers at 2:00, which is big news. So any team will have an opportunity to claim him, though, Pat. I don't expect that to happen. Something could always surprise me. Maybe if a bad team needs another netminder, they could claim Jarry, but I expect him to go unclaimed. Again, that's my opinion. And he'll probably be sent down to Wilkes-Barre to be buried down there for a little bit, and the Penguins will have to recall one of their netminders. But again, we were discussing all that during our main episode, but this was a move that had to happen. 824 goaltending, 2 starts in a row. And as I say during our main episode, he has not won a start since December 23rd against the Philadelphia Flyers. It's been almost a month. He's been awful this season, and you could not keep trotting him out there and be considered a serious organization.
For sure. And as I have also said on our main show, when you have this problem, you need now to find out whether it's totally the goaltending or if this team's defensive flaws are really fatal. The last thing I'll add before we jump back into our regularly scheduled episode for this Wednesday is I also could see a world where he just needs a change of scenery. He might not, there might just be a mental block there for whatever reason. Can't figure it out in Pittsburgh, goes somewhere else, figures it out, is an average goaltender in the National Hockey League. But we will see what happens with that. We will break the rest of this down on our Thursday episode when we return. But for now, enjoy our Wednesday episode. And thank you, as always, for tuning in to Locked On Penguins. The Penguins wrapped up their homestand in unimpressive fashion, and Hunter and I are going to break it down right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Patrick Damp. You can follow me across all social media platforms at synonym for wet. Joined as always by my partner in crime, the one and only Hunter Hodes. You can follow him on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can give our show's Twitter a follow at LO_Penguins. And of course, we appreciate you making us part of your daily routine. Don't forget that we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. And if you're following us on YouTube, go ahead and hit that notification button so you'll be among the first to know when we drop our daily Monday through Friday episodes. Before we get going, today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. Well, it was, like I said, an unimpressive end to the Penguins homestand. And really, it was the same game that we saw on Sunday night on Tuesday night against the Seattle Kraken. The Penguins lose 4-2 to the Seattle Kraken at home after having a 2-1 lead after 40 minutes. And really, there are no two ways about this, Hunter. It's been something of sort of an issue to a total issue all season long. And once again, last night, it has officially become the problem with the Penguins. They cannot get a save when they need one. Once again, they nearly double up their opponent in shots. They pretty much take them behind the woodshed on every aspect of the game, whether it's time of possession, shot attempts, you name it. The Penguins were the better team for the majority of the game last night. And in some of the most crucial moments, Tristan Jarry gives up a couple of back-breaking goals. I do want to start because most of this podcast today is going to talk about goaltending. It's going to talk about all the problems the Penguins have in the net. But I want to at least give this a passive mention, and that's of the Kraken's 2 goals in the third period to take the lead and ultimately win the game, taking out the empty net goal. The Penguins did not play good defense. On Jamie Alexiak's goal, Evgeny Malkin barely gives any effort to impede, stop, hit, take the puck away from him. But he walks right down Main Street and scores an unscreened goal on Tristan Jarry. Sorry, it's Jamie Alexiak, not Nikita Kucherov like on Sunday, who is an elite all-time goal scorer. And then on Eli Tolvanen's winning goal, Ricard Raquel does not stick nearly closely enough to his man on that play, giving him the opportunity. But again, wasn't a high percentage shot that Tristan Jarry should probably stop. So at the very least, I do have to mention that the Penguins' defensive play in those 2 goals were not acceptable. But as we say on this show, and so many others say, you are in fact allowed to make a save.
First off, yes, I agree with you. The defensive work on both of those goals was, in one word, atrocious. You could not let Jamie Alexiak walk down Main Street like that, basically go 1-on-5 in that situation and just snipe one past your goalie. Now, that said, you need a timely save there. That line had been out there for way too long. You need to come up with a timely save there as a goalie to be like, hey guys, I got you. I'm going to cover this puck up. Go on and change. We can keep defending this lead. We'll get some fresh bodies out here. That didn't happen. And actually, before that, Jarry had a chance to cover the puck up with a little over 12 minutes remaining. Had an easy shot, kind of fumbled the rebound. The play keeps going. Alexiak then a few seconds later, boom, puck's in the back of the net. The third goal, that was also, again, really poor defense there. I'm not going to blame that one as much on Jarry because he really had no chance on that. But the way they still defended in that third period was awful. They were defending beautifully those first 40 minutes. Heck, even the first 5 minutes of the third period, Pat, I thought the Penguins were doing a really nice job in their own zone. But that all went away in the final 15 minutes. It felt like right after the Kraken tied the game with how bad they were defensively there, you just knew what was coming because, man, he allows the backbreaker. You could kind of tell, at least in my mind, that the players are like, here we go again. He allowed this goal, and now it's only going to be a few minutes before he allows another one. And in this case, it was seconds. They scored 2 goals in less than a minute. Again, third one, not as much on Jarry, but you still want to save on the second goal. But it goes back to the overall point I want to make right now. The Pittsburgh Penguins, these last 2 games, if you take out the empty net goals for shots on goal, the Penguins have outshot their opponents 66-34 in these last 2 games. Both of them, Pat, are regulation losses. They have basically doubled these last 2 teams, the Kraken and the Lightning, up on shots, and they have lost both games in regulation because A, they can't finish, at least these last 2 games, and B, they are getting awful, and I mean awful goaltending from a goalie that's making over $5 million per season. They need to cut bait with him at this point. It's beyond time. Like he is sabotaging them with these games. He has not won a start, Pat, since December 23rd against the Philadelphia Flyers. We are almost at a month between wins. He has not won a start since before Christmas. It's beyond repair at this point. You need to, figure out a trade. That's the best case scenario. But if you can't do that, which you probably can't considering his contract, you need to waive him and bury him in the minors. You cannot keep getting 824 goaltending from a guy that makes over $5 million per season. You look at these last few starts since that game against the Flyers: 879 against the Islanders, 897 against the Blue Jackets, 824 against the Bolts, 824 against the Kraken. That's not close to good enough. And the biggest reason why they have been losing a lot of games lately, I'll continue to say it, has been their goaltending. It is insulting the level of goaltending that the Penguins have gotten this season.
It's really bad. And to further your point about the last two games, when you pop the hood and look at the analytics of it, both of these games were very much played at 5-on-5. There was not a lot of power play opportunities for either side against Tampa Bay or against the Seattle Kraken. And to that point, against Seattle at 5-on-5, the Penguins overall controlled 58% of the shot attempts in the possession at 5-on-5. Last night, they hit just under 61% of the shot attempts and possession at 5-on-5. That should be, I should say, enough to get you a victory. That should be enough to get you a win. And if you don't get a win, it means one of two things in that scenario. And I think some of this is an issue with the first thing is a little bit of an issue with the Penguins, but it's not so much a problem because of the goaltending. The first issue could be if you get that much possession and don't win, it means you can't score. And yeah, the Penguins are having some goal scoring issues as of late. You look at last night, they can only muster 2 goals out of that. Kind of the same deal against Tampa Bay. They can only muster a handful against them. But the other problem, and this is the big problem, is you're not getting saves because both games you hold your opponent under 20 shots. And I have a lot of cliches and a lot of things saved in my head to talk about hockey. One of them, it's an old cliche. It's an old thought process, but it's that for a reason because it works. It's what I call the 30-20 theory. If you can get 30 or more shots and hold your opponent under 20 or less, chances are you're going to win the game. That's a fair enough recipe for success. In the last 2 games, Penguins have done exactly that. So what is the common denominator? It's the guy between the pipes. And I wrote about this morning. It's going to be a very difficult decision for Kyle Dubas. I understand that. You re-signed this guy, you tied yourself to him, but it's not, say, like Ryan Graves, where you can bury him on the bottom pairing. If somebody like Owen Pickering comes up and shows that they are more than capable of playing a regular shift, you can put him in the press box. With a goalie, you either have to play him or you have to play his backup. And now the problem is neither of them are up to par. They both have sub 900 save percentages. It's an equal 886. And yeah, the average save percentage in the NHL this year is 903. But if they were hanging around like 895, 900, you just go, hey, this is the way goaltending is on average in the NHL now. But 886 is so far below the average, it is a liability.
100%. And Pat, we didn't even discuss the first goal that was scored in this game. Chandler Stevenson, who has not really scored much at all this season, comes in, not even on a full 2-on-1. The other Penguin skater was able to come back and take away the odd man rush. It looks like he's barely even trying to shoot there. Puck still squeezes past Jarry. By the way, second shot of the game. It's almost like he's doing it on purpose. Honestly, it's so weird, man. I just, how are you allowing that goal in that situation? It wasn't even a prime scoring chance, and he's not even making that type of save. Like, he just looks like someone who is a broken goalie right now. It looks like someone who badly needs a change of scenery. You cannot keep trotting him out there. You cannot keep trotting this duo out there, honestly. You need to recall one of these 2 kids from Wilkes-Barre, either Larson or Blomqvist, and give them a run for a little bit and see what they can do. They are putting up better numbers for Wilkes-Barre than the 2 main netminders for this team are in the NHL. You have to figure out a way to bring one of them up because you cannot keep rotating back and forth between these 2 goalies who are crushing you on a nightly basis.
It's really the Penguins' Achilles heel right now. We will keep this discussion moving in the second segment, as well as talk about what is going to be an absolutely crucial 7-game road trip for the Pittsburgh Penguins that begins later this week. But before we do that, we've got to take a break and we've got to tell you about some sponsors. And that starts with our first one, and that is GameTime. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert, not last year, but 2 years ago, though the tour did come to an end last year, and Hunter's going to roll his eyes, but it is, in fact, the Taylor Swift Eras Tour. Absolutely incredible moment. Loved it. One of the best things I've ever done. The energy and excitement were absolutely unforgettable. Now GameTime has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, GameTime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. GameTime, especially since I have joined Locked On Penguins, has become my go-to place to buy tickets, whether it's Hunter and I going to Penguins games, checking out a Steeler game, or anything else. This app is incredible. I am such a huge fan, whether it's getting the seat view in a panoramic view, that feature, GameTime Picks, and the all-in pricing, so I'm not hit with any of those annoying fees at checkout. Highly recommend GameTime. Highly recommend you check it out. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, welcome back to the Wednesday edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Patrick Damp, joined as always by Hunter Hodes. And let's pick it up where we left off in the previous segment, talking about the goaltending, and we'll talk a little bit to end the segment about this impending road trip. But the thing that I want to bring to the forefront here when it comes to the goaltending is I brought up the save percentages of both Tristan Jarry and Alex Nedeljkovic. They're both at an 886 an 886, completely below the line. But then when you go check out Philip Larson or Joel Blomqvist, they're both doing extremely well in the American Hockey League, especially Philip Larson. He's got 4 shutouts, a 927 save percentage, a guy who was a draft pick pre-COVID of the Red Wings, went overseas for a few years, found his game, and now appears to be ready to take that leap in North American professional hockey. Do I think that these guys are going to suddenly morph this team into a winner that goes on a run? No, but the argument I would make is there have been some blips on the radar, to be sure. There's been a couple games where the effort wasn't fantastic, or, you look at the Ottawa game where they come out completely flat. But since Thanksgiving Eve, when they started to turn this thing around, they've played a really strong brand of hockey. The problem is they're not getting saves, or at the very least, the thing that I have been mentioning is at least once a game, whether it's Ned, whether it's Jarry, you look at their performance, and even in a win, you go, oh man, there was a goal there that you wish you would have made that save.
Right. No, 100%. It's so rare when it feels like, oh, one of these guys stole it for the Penguins. The closest I feel like we've come to seeing that over this last little while was Nedeljkovic against the Oilers. I wouldn't say he stole it because the Penguins had such a great start, but he made key timely saves throughout that game, especially in the second period, in the third period. But those moments have been so few and far between this year where it's like, oh, okay, you want to reward him for that start. That makes sense. We've been talking about that for these last couple of weeks. But then he follows that start up, whether it's him or Jarry, with an absolute dud. It feels like they have one good start every 2 to 4 weeks at this rate, Pat. Honestly, that is what it feels like when you look at their game logs and you look at, the wins versus the losses. It feels like they have one actual competent good start every 2 weeks to around a month. And you're not going to win enough games at the NHL level unless your goal is to fully tank this year, which I don't think their goal is to tank. I think you owe it to Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Chris Letang to call up one of those 2 goaltenders in Wilkes-Barre and to figure out the situation where you can jettison one of these 2 guys. The goal should be Jarry, just because the contract, he just looks like a broken goalie, etc., etc. but you need to figure out a way to bring one of those two up, to give one of those two goalies, a 4 to 5 to maybe 6 game run to see like, okay, what can you do at the NHL level? We already saw Blomqvist a little bit. He looked the part. I would not be mad if they called him up again, obviously. It would be also intriguing if they called up Larson because he is lighting up the AHL this year. One of the best goaltenders down there. You mentioned the 4 shutouts. His goals against average is very low. He has been awesome for Wilkes-Barre. And if you call up one of those two goaltenders, that also potentially allows Sergei Murashov to come up to Wilkes-Barre to see what he can do up there. Because let's face it, Pat, he is too good for the ECHL. He has been on fire with the Wheeling Nailers this year. He deserves to be playing in the AHL. There's just such a big logjam, and they haven't been able to put him up there. So, again, you have plenty of reasons why you need to figure out to bring up one of these two netminders in Wilkes-Barre and try to jettison one of these two netminders on the main squad because you cannot get by with this goaltending. And it's not even just this year. Last year, Ned was all right, but Jarry still stunk, especially in the second half of the season. Even before that, it was kind of the same thing with Jarry. Had a good first half, second half tailed off. This year, he didn't even have that good of a first half. He's just been bad all year. And you can't win with this goaltending. I know that's been the main theme of our episode today, but this continues to be their biggest problem. Yeah, I know people. They are still not that good of a defensive team, but that can only go so far when you're getting 8-24 goaltending, especially these last 2 starts.
Just like people who are into fitness, are into working out, constantly say you can't outwork a bad diet. You can't out-defend bad goaltending. You can keep it at bay for a little bit, but you really can't defend your way out of having an 8-24 goaltender in the NHL in 2025. One last thing I want to mention on the goaltending, and you briefly said this in the first segment. It's something I have noticed with this team on multiple occasions when it comes to Tristan Jarry and the goaltending. You watch last night, you watch against Tampa Bay, and you watch a couple different occasions this season in Tristan Jarry's starts. He gives up a back-breaking goal, and what happens immediately after? The team just kind of falls apart. And I know that there will be a lot of people who see that and say, oh, it's a mentally weak team. They run from the first sign of pressure or trouble. I disagree. I think these guys know. They're going to say the right things. They're going to support their teammate. Crosby's going to tell Josh Yohe, we got to find a way to win. We've got to figure it out. We've got to do the little things. We've got to play defense, blah, 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 blah. They know what's going on. He gives up that goal, and their mentality isn't, oh, man, we're such a bad team. We're cooked. It's over. Their thought process is, this guy can't make a save. We can't win with this guy. Every time we give this guy an opportunity to show us we can win with him, he blows it. And yeah, again, that is obviously speculation on my part. I'm not in their heads. I'm not in the locker room. I don't talk to them, but I know body language. I know when a team who plays a really good game for 45 minutes last night and then gives up a backbreaker of a goal that is especially a problem with the goalie, their mentality is, here we go again. We can't win with this guy. So that is a huge problem. And yeah, maybe Blomqvist or Larson aren't the answer. Maybe they come up and it's more of the same and we find out, okay, yeah, Tristan Jarry and Alex Nedeljkovic are below average, but this team's defense is really bad. But now you're at a point where with the way you've played over the last 2 months, the way this team has been able to fight its way back, at least for a little bit, into the playoff conversation, you have to take that chance. You have to find out.
No, I agree. And you saw what Mike Sullivan was saying after the game. And I know I've been pretty critical of him on this show this year and going back to last year, but he was really crushing them for their defensive efforts. And while I get it, it definitely was bad in the third period, I also did not like the way the Penguins played after the Kraken took the lead. 3-2 lead. Penguins really did not generate anything offensively in the third period after that. I kind of see where you're coming from because it felt like they kind of knew like, man, here we go again. And now we're just not going to be able to generate. Like, they barely got any offensive zone time on the Kraken after that goal. Credit to Seattle. They clamped down, especially after how poor they were for the first 45 minutes. The Penguins were doing whatever they want in their own zone, or in Seattle zone, excuse me. But they just couldn't get anything going after that. And you saw Mike Sullivan again. He was really crushing them for their defensive effort. And while I get that, I feel like, and this is a little bit speculation as well, I feel like he was kind of biting his tongue a little bit as well with the netminder. He can't obviously bury his guy to the media. He's never been like that for as long as he's been the head coach. He's not going to bury someone, full on John Tortorella style, anything like that. But, part of me really does wonder, does he really want to say the big elephant in the room here? Yeah, I get it. You want to crush your team for being bad defensively on those 2 goals? I get it. But I think he's kind of biting his tongue a little bit.
You can definitely see that he wants to broach that topic. He certainly wants to say something about this team's goaltending issues, but it's just not his style. It's not who he is. It's not who he's ever been. And there's a part of me, I admire that, because hockey is in fact a team game, and the amount of time that professional athletes have to spend together. This isn't Monday Night Rec League where you see one another once a month or once a week, and you can say, oh, our goalie sucked tonight, and then you don't see each other for 6 days. They got to show up to the rink tomorrow, and then on Thursday or Friday they got to hit the road for nearly 2 weeks. And if Mike Sullivan goes out there and says, yeah, Tristan Jarry sucks, he's terrible, I can't get a freaking save out of this guy, it's going to be real hard for him to go into that room, and it's going to be real hard for him to put him in the net. So it's a difficult thing to do. So I understand going after the collective rather than going after the individual. So I totally understand where he's coming from. Instead of talking about the road trip coming up, we can save that for tomorrow's episode, since this team is on a couple-day break. We went kind of long talking about the goaltending, but instead of focusing on a totally negative episode, because there's a lot of negative to focus on right now, it is in fact Wednesday. So when we come back, it is time for Hunter and I to hand out our weekly MVP as part of Warrior Helmet Wednesday. I have a feeling we're going to agree on this one, and most of our audience probably knows who is going to get Wednesday's Warrior Helmet, but we will do that when we return right after this. We got to tell you about our last sponsor, and that is Indeed. You just realized your business needs to hire someone yesterday, so how can you find amazing candidates fast? That's easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. While I have never been in the position to hire someone, I have used Indeed when I have been on the job hunt, and it is absolutely excellent. It helped me get in touch with my current employer, as well as score me quite a few interviews as I was on the job hunt all those years ago. It's a great service. It will help you find the job you need. And if you're an employer, it'll help you find the exact employee that you are looking for. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring Indeed is all you need. All right, welcome back to the Wednesday edition of Locked On Penguins. I'm Patrick Damp, alongside Hunter Hodes as always. And as I said, it's Wednesday. That means it's MVP day. That means it's Warrior Helmet Wednesday. For some of our new subscribers and new listeners, we do this every single Wednesday. We are paying homage to the 2016 Stanley Cup winning Pittsburgh Penguins. During that run, during the regular season, as well as throughout the playoffs, they had a cool little Warrior helmet that they gave out post-game amongst themselves in the locker room as their team MVP. It was a Warrior helmet, so we're paying homage to that. We pick our MVP of the week, the player we think had the best week for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And Hunter, I will kick it off by saying it's a guy who we love on this show, one of our favorite players, a consummate pro, defines what it means to be a Pittsburgh Penguin. I got to give it to number 17, Brian Rust, a great week for him despite everything that happened. 3 points in the victory over the Edmonton Oilers, then an assist against the Tampa Bay Lightning and a goal again last night. So 5 points in 4 games for Brian Rust. He has had a marvelous season. When Chris Letang was out of the lineup for a few games, he had a letter on his jersey, which he absolutely deserves. He has been one of, if not the most consistent Penguin all season long. Love his game. Loved his week. What say you?
Yeah, Brian Rust, he's been awesome throughout the year. I was actually going back and forth between him and Rickard Rakell because Rakell, 3 points throughout this last week, Pat. He continues to be red hot this season. 22 goals, 38 points this season. But I am going to go with Russ for this week. Rakell, if I had to split it, I would give Rakell the other half. But it goes to show how close it was this last week with how great both players are playing. Yeah, I want to see a little bit more with Brian Rust in his own zone a little bit with the way he plays defense sometimes, but I also know they're not paying him to play defense. Rust, though, he was fantastic, especially in that game against Edmonton. He had a couple beautiful plays, a couple just insane passes with a puck on his stick that was like, holy crap, man. I mean, that was awesome. He's scoring at will, just almost like Rickard Rakell, and he continues to be one of the Penguins' MVPs this year. It's him, Crosby, Rakell, obviously up there as well. And it's funny. It feels like if they're not getting offense from either Rust or Rakell, or obviously Sid or Bunting, they're not winning a lot of games this year. You can throw obviously Evgeny Malkin in there as well. He's cooled off a little bit as of late, but he also just came back from an injury after 4 games. And we'll get into something else regarding Evgeny Malkin in just a second because, my God, man, whoever stole those 3 Stanley Cup rings, I want you found right now, you absolute clown. But still, going back to my original point, I will give it to Russ for this week. But it was really close. I almost wanted to give it to Rakell again.
Both players had a fantastic week despite the results on the scoreboard. You have to commend the way those two are playing. And can we just have Sweden leave Rakell off of every roster every year? Because he apparently went full Michael Jordan in The Last Dance and said, and I took that personally, because he has been a man on fire ever since he got left off that roster. Real quick to end the show, Hunter, you brought it up. Got to give a shout out to one of my colleagues at KDK TV, Jennifer Barrasso. She was the first on this story last night with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Evgeny Malkin's home in Swickley Heights was broken into over the weekend, and apparently his 3 Stanley Cup rings they have described it as missing. So I don't want to speak on the case without all of the facts, but that does heavily imply that they were stolen. So at the very least, his 3 Stanley Cup rings from 09, 16, and 17 are now missing. And it kind of puts him in the same category of a growing list of professional athletes over the last year who have had their homes broken into. He joins a list of players like Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, Joe Burrow on the Cincinnati Bengals, Luka Doncic from the Dallas Mavericks. And he's not the only NHL player this has happened to. Late last year, Dallas Stars forward Tyler Seguin had his home targeted in this. So, like you said, whoever did this, I hope you are found. I hope if and when you try to pawn these rings, you get all of the justice that should be coming to you for this, because people like this, they don't deserve that. It's not something good. It's not something right. So hopefully all these things are found. We figure out who did this. They're brought to justice, and we have to be happy that Malkin, his family, were not harmed as far as we know in any of this. So terrible story, awful thing to see, but we will follow it as it develops.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, my friend. I hope that this person is found, or a group of people, whoever it is, super quickly, and that they are brought to justice, because there is no room for that crap. Stealing 3 Stanley Cup rings, breaking into someone's home like that, that's ridiculous. I don't know why there's so many stupid people like this in the world, but I concur with you, my friend. I hope that they are brought to justice very quickly. And, Evgeny Malkin, his parents have been in town for the last couple of months. They haven't gotten back to Russia. They've been here since the ceremony. So again, as you said, just glad that they're safe, glad that he's safe, glad his whole entire family is safe. But yeah, hopefully that this gets resolved sooner rather than later overall.
For sure. And that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Penguins. Hunter and I will be back tomorrow. There's going to be plenty to talk about with the 7-game road trip coming up and everything else surrounding this team. But for now, we appreciate you making us part of your daily routine. We will be back with a brand new episode on Thursday. So for Hunter Hodes, I'm Patrick Damp. Thank you again for tuning in. We will be back with a new episode on Thursday.